Good afternoon, everybody. This is Matt Webster again. Today, back with another video in my Christian Journey series, where I want to talk about a character that God had highlighted from a TV show called Full Metal Alchemist. Today's character is Edward Elric. This character is one that I have often associated with, which I'll go throughout the video and explain a little bit. Uh, Edward Elric's character is the main character of the TV series Full Metal Alchemist. His character is one that can be defined as trying to be God in some regards. It's not perfectly demonstrated that way on the show, but he does tend to be very arrogant and prideful, um, power driven. He's also very knowledge driven. And something about knowledge that should be known to most people, especially if you've read the Bible, is that knowledge is technically what initially got humanity in trouble. Um, the only knowledge that we needed was the knowledge that God had already given, which was to trust God. Having said that, we're here now. That's how things are. Uh, this character also is driven by the love for his friends and his brother in particular. He often makes choices that people would question, and he goes out of his way to try to help others, even though he doesn't often do it in the best regards. Uh, he doesn't often know how to be soft and gentle with what he says. He tends to just be very vocal and to the point about what he's trying to get at. He does learn throughout the series how to be humbled and how to say things without being as overtly straightforward, which sometimes is something that can get us all in trouble, myself included. There are people in my life where I've known that I needed to be straight up with them about what I needed to say, being direct and to the point. And there's other people where you kind of learn with God that you have to have a gentle approach. So this character in that way is also something that I have personally struggled with. It's kind of learning where and when to say exactly what you need to say and how to say it. In this TV show, he's also someone who, of very few people in the show, has a unique thing that happens where they do this thing that's called forbidden alchemy, and they're trying to bring back their mother. And one of the things that's kind of highlighted is that playing God is what they're essentially trying to do, which is recreate life, the life that's lost, instead of just acknowledging the pain and moving past it and trying to grow from it. They're taught a very powerful lesson in that if you try to play God, you often get burned, which is what happens. Um, he loses both an arm and a leg, to bringing back his mother and then trying to set his brother's soul to a suit of armor. And so a big thing in the show too is that it talks a lot about souls and the human soul and how it functions, which clearly highlights that even in this show that there is a God, because if the soul is something that can be bonded to something like we bond ourselves to each other, it's something that's worth highlighting. Now, what I was saying before is that there's a unique set of characters in the show. There's not very many of them who have done this kind of forbidden thing, who have opened what's called the gate of truth. And essentially, in that world, it's kind of like God, like giving them a thing back, trying to show them that there's more to what's going on than what they understand, and the reason why life has to play out the way that it does. This thing's called the gate of truth. It's kind of like the forbidden fruit that Adam and Eve ate, in the Garden of Eden. This door gives you all this knowledge, and it comes flooding into your mind, and they're given knowledge that they don't even understand how to use, um, which is the devil's game. Sometimes you're given things, and the devil knows what it can do to you and gives you this false grandeur of power, which is what happens throughout the series, especially with Edward. He's kind of like this child prodigy, and he's given all this power, and it makes him arrogant, boastful, prideful. And these are things that I've learned in my own life. When I was given things way too early and I didn't know how to handle them or respect them, it kind of put me back to a state where like I needed to be humbled. And I've had to be humbled time and time and time again in my life, as most of us do, which is why the show I think has an important lesson at the end of it. So Edward discovers through this gate and through the process of character development and stuff through the show about sacrificial love. He's always had it, but he never really recognized it until the very end of the series. Um, After they beat the false god, and he's given a chance to bring his brother back after his brother sacrificed himself, he's given this question of like, what could you possibly give me that would let me give you your brother back, to let his soul come back to his body? And Ed's answer is all of my power, everything else that I have, these abilities that you've given me. Um, it's a completely humbling moment because the gated truth had presented him with the option that he could give away the very power that he fought so hard to have, and it's a sacrifice that he makes out of love, which is sacrificial love. He goes on with his life afterwards as just a normal human. It's an act of humility. And when we all learn how to be human is when we learn the grace of God. Because to be human is not to be weak. It's to accept that we are deeply flawed and do have weaknesses, but our weaknesses can be made strong by God. Oftentimes the devil wants you to think that your weaknesses are a permanent thing, and that they're going to be what God wants to keep you there because he's not giving you things. The devil wants us to all be afraid of what power is given to us by God, because the devil himself can't acknowledge the fact that humanity has great strength. But our strength comes from knowing that we are weak, we do have weaknesses, and that we can rely on someone else. And sometimes you have to rely on each other, which is something that God also highlights. You find fellowship, you find people that you bond with, that you can share your problems with. This is something I have found even in my own life that I struggle with, because sometimes it's not easy to find people that you click with, or people that you really feel comfortable sharing things with. And sometimes even sharing those things can be an act of humility because it can be hard. It can be hard. There's another quote in the show that I think really highlights something really godly too, and that's this quote about alchemy. Um, the quote from the show is, "The law of equivalent exchange is to gain something or create something by losing an item of equal value, or a value must be sacrificed." That's not perfectly quoted, by the way, but it will highlight my point. So the idea is that in order to gain something, you must lose something. God does do this. In fact, a lot of times, the thing that you think you're losing actually is the thing that's been holding you back the most. In my own life, pride sometimes is something that I hold on to because I'm stubborn and pig-headed. And this is something that's highlighted in the show with his friends, with the girl that he loves. And it's something I've done in my own life where it's like, I will be obstinate. And like, now, having said that, not all of it's bad, because sometimes there are things that God is truly trying to get out of me to get to other people. And sometimes those people are being just as stubborn as I am. And it's something that we all do. Having said that, it takes an act of humility. So when you sacrifice pride, what you actually gain is humility in the process. Because to be humble and to be teachable is something that God wants. It acknowledges the fact that you're human and that you have human limitations. And through God, those human limitations kind of become null and void because God will enact on you power and give you the power to do things that other people will think are impossible. And knowing that can sometimes be enough to get you through the end of the day. And it's something that you have to come back continuously. It's something that Satan himself did not do. Satan had all the power in the world, and his problem was he wanted to be God as well, which is something that happens with the main villain of the show. He has all this power and has all these abilities, and he's got all those gifts, but instead of just accepting that he has those gifts, he sacrifices them because he wants to ultimately be God. instead of just being grateful for what he has. And that is seen throughout this show. Um, it's just something I wanted to point out because understanding how the devil works in your life and how he operates is a very important thing. Something I've even noticed that I'm going to make a later video on is that when the devil can't attack you directly, the devil is cunning. He will find ways to hit you, like what he does with this, like the character does in this show. He'll start attacking those around you because he knows that it's going to hurt you. And the thing that I've kind of learned recently is that there's always going to be a little bit of pain in life, and sometimes you have to live with that pain. It's not to hurt you, it's to build you. Which brings me back to the final quote that I wanted to go over with you, and that's a passage from Romans 12. Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve of what God's will is. So this is kind of going along with the character in the show. He had to learn how to be human. And when you learn how to be human, what you really learn is how to submit to a greater being than yourself and understand that even though you're submitting, God still thinks highly of you, and that you should think highly of you too, but it shouldn't be to a point where it's prideful and boastful. There's nothing wrong with thinking highly of yourself and thinking that you can accomplish and do better things. That is completely reasonable. It's when you start becoming worship wanting like Satan, where you don't want to do it for reasons being that, oh man, I feel great about this, I did this great job. It's, hey, look at this thing I did. You guys should all be praising me. I think that's a problem that a lot of people have. I know I've had it in my own self, and I know there's other people in my life that are struggling with this right now. There's so many forms of pride in that, and I think understanding that whilst pride is a sin, it's something that we all deal with because we are human, and it doesn't mean that we can't overcome it with a little help. Anyways, once again, I hope this video finds you all well, and I look forward to talking to you guys again next time.